What if your entire life came down to one final request? A request so simple yet so powerful that it could change everything. In a silent courtroom, an ex-soldier sits with his fate hanging by a thread. But he doesn't plead for his freedom. Instead, he asks for just one thing, one last chance to see his loyal companion, the only friend who never left his side. What happens next stuns the entire courtroom. And no one is prepared for the shocking truth that unfolds. The soldier's final plea, a courtroom moment. No one expected. The courtroom's heavy silence, a soldier's fate, hangs in the balance. The air inside the courtroom is thick with tension. The high ceilings and cold marble floors amplify every whisper, every shift in the wooden benches where spectators sit, waiting. Outside, the sky is dark, rain tapping against the windows, a storm brewing, mirroring the storm inside Jack Turner's life. At the defendant's table, Jack sits motionless, his broad shoulders hunched, his face lined with exhaustion and sorrow. Once a decorated war hero, he is now a man on trial, stripped of his honor, awaiting judgment. Across from him, the judge watches with a stern, unreadable gaze. The prosecutor, dressed sharply in a dark suit, flips through papers, ready to seal Jack's fate. In the gallery, reporters whisper to each other, sensing that something extraordinary is about to unfold. Jack doesn't look at any of them. His fingers press against the rough edge of the table, his mind elsewhere, on the past, on war, on him. A final plea, one last goodbye. Before it's too late, finally, the judge clears his throat. Mr. Turner, before sentencing, do you have anything to say in your defense? Jack exhales slowly. When he speaks, his voice is hoarse but steady. I don't ask for mercy, he says. I don't ask for freedom. I only ask for one thing, as to see Shadow, one last time. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Some exchange puzzled glances, others lean forward, intrigued. The prosecutor scoffs. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Jack's jaw tightens. He doesn't care about the law, he doesn't care about the courtroom's rules, all he cares about is Shadow. The judge leans forward, his expression unreadable. And why should this court grant your request, Jack? Swallows, his chest tightening. Because, he says, voice thick with emotion, he's the only family I have left. Shadow, a soldier's silent guardian now gone. Silence blankets the courtroom. For the first time, Jack's mask of indifference cracks. His mind floods with memories. Gunfire, smoke, the battlefield. Shadow, a German shepherd with sharp instincts and a fearless heart, charging through the chaos, dragging Jack out of harm's way. The warmth of Shadow's fur against his shaking hands after a near-death encounter. The unspoken bond between them, two warriors side by side in a world that didn't care if they lived or died. But now, Shadow is gone. Taken from him the moment he was arrested. Months have passed. Jack has no idea where he is, if he's safe or even if he's alive. And now, time is running out. The courtroom divides. A controversial request. The judge's fingers tap against his desk in thought. This is highly unusual, he admits. Bringing an animal into a courtroom is against protocol. The prosecutor straightens. Your Honor, this is a clear attempt to distract from the charges at hand. Jack's lawyer steps in. Your Honor, with all due respect, this dog is not just a pet. Shadow is a retired military service dog. He and Jack served together. They saved each other's lives. Another murmur spreads through the courtroom. Some faces soften, others remain skeptical. The judge exhales. This is not a decision I take lightly. Jack's heart pounds. The weight of everything, his mistakes, his regrets, his love for Shadow presses against his chest. A moment that changes everything. The judge studies Jack carefully, searching his face for something beyond legal arguments. Perhaps he sees the exhaustion in his eyes, the quiet desperation of a man who has lost everything. A long silence stretches, then, thud, the gavel strikes. Bring in the dog. The courtroom erupts, gasps, whispers, reporters scrambling to write notes. The prosecutor's face twists in frustration, but he doesn't object further. Jack exhales sharply, his hands gripping the table. His heart pounds in his ears. Shadow is coming. A battle beyond the war, Jack's true struggle. Jack's fists clench as the doors open. He has faced war, he has faced death. But this moment, this is what truly terrifies him. Will Shadow recognize him? Will he be angry, confused? Has he been treated well in Jack's absence? More than anything, will this be their last moment? Together, the audience holds its breath. An unspoken bond, stronger than rules. A set of heavy footsteps echo through the hall. Then, a familiar shape emerges. Shadow, a large German shepherd, his fur slightly grayer than Jack remembers. His ears flick up, eyes scanning the room. He hesitates for a moment as if unsure. Jack's breath catches. Then, Shadow's ears perk. His tail gives the smallest wag. Jack barely has time to brace himself before Shadow breaks free from the guard's grip and sprints toward him. Gasps fill the room. Jack is on his knees before he even realizes it. Shadow barrels into him, pressing his face against Jack's chest, whining softly. Jack buries his fingers into Shadow's fur, his body shaking not from fear but from something deeper, something he hasn't felt in months. Home, a decision that could change everything. The courtroom watches in stunned silence. The judge, the jury, even the prosecutor, no one speaks. Because in this moment, they all understand. This is not just a soldier and a dog. This is a bond forged in war, tested by separation and reunited against all odds. And now, the biggest question remains, what happens next? The gavel hasn't fallen yet, the verdict hasn't been given. But one thing is certain, this courtroom will never forget what they just witnessed. The courtroom doors swing open. A hush falls over the room. Every eye turns to the entrance as Shadow steps inside, his strong frame tense, his ears flicking as he scans the unfamiliar surroundings. His fur, once sleek and pristine, looks slightly dull, his movements cautious but alert. Jack barely breathes. For a long, agonizing moment, Shadow stands frozen, his dark eyes sweeping across the crowd. The murmuring voices, the sterile scent of polished wood and old paper, none of it matters. He's looking for something. Someone. Then his gaze lands on Jack. Recognition ignites. A deep, desperate whimper escapes Shadow's throat. His ears shoot forward, tail hesitating for a fraction of a second. Then, without warning, he lunges forward, breaking free from the handler's grip. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. Jack is out of his seat before he even realizes it. He barely has time to brace himself before Shadow collides into him, burying his face into Jack's chest with a trembling, urgent whine. Jack stumbles but holds firm, his arms wrapping around the dog instinctively. Shadow is home. Jack buries. His face in the thick fur, his body shaking. They took everything from him, his career, his freedom, his dignity. But this they could never take. For the first time in months, Jack feels whole again. The world around them fades. Jack's mind drifts into the past. Gunfire, smoke, the acrid scent of burning metal, Shadow bounding through the chaos, his body low to the ground, weaving through bullets. Jack calling his name, his voice hoarse, barely audible over the explosions. Blast, heat, pain. The moment Jack thought he was done for, Shadow was there. Teeth sinking into his vest, dragging him away from the wreckage. Holding on even when Jack's body had gone limp. He had saved Jack's life. And now, standing in this courtroom, pressed against his dog, Jack knows he would do the same for Shadow, no matter the cost. The spell is shattered by a cold, sharp voice. Jack Turner is not a war hero. He is a criminal. The words slice through the moment like a blade. Jack stiffens. The murmurs in the courtroom grow louder. From across the room, the prosecutor rises to his feet, his expression sharp and unyielding. This court should not be distracted by emotional reunions, he says. The fact remains, Jack Turner is on trial today not for his service, but for his crime. A tense pause, then the bombshell drops. Jack Turner stole Shadow from the military. Gasps, shocked whispers. The weight of the accusation hits like a punch. Jack stole Shadow. Jack's breath catches as the judge leans forward, his expression unreadable. The prosecutor doesn't hesitate. Shadow was government property, he declares. Jack Turner refused to return him after his service ended. He knowingly broke military law. The words sting like a slap. Jack keeps his hand on Shadow's fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. Shadow doesn't understand the words being spoken, doesn't know that in this moment his very existence is being debated. Would they take him away? Would he be locked in a cold cage, waiting for a fate neither of them could bear? Jack's fists tighten. Not again. Jack finally speaks. His voice is raw. I didn't steal Shadow. I saved him. The courtroom falls silent. Jack looks up, his eyes burning with emotion. They were going to put him down. Another wave of gasps. The judge narrows his eyes. Explain. Jack swallows hard. When a military dog retires, they don't always get a second chance. The ones labeled too aggressive, they don't make it out. He takes a deep breath. Shadow was one of them. Shock ripples through the room. Some people glance at the German shepherd, who sits obediently. At Jack's side, tail still, golden eyes watching everything. A hero deemed too aggressive. Jack shakes his head. Shadow isn't just a soldier, he's my family. And I wasn't going to let him die because some piece of paper said he wasn't fit for civilian life. The audience sees it now. Not just a man and his dog, but a warrior fighting against an unjust fate. The prosecutor stands firm. Rules exist for a reason, Mr. Turner. Jack doesn't flinch. Yeah, and some rules are wrong. A tense silence. Jack clenches his fists. He has fought wars. He has followed orders. But this was where he drew the line. What kind of law condemns a hero just because he served his country? Jack's voice hardens. Shadow did. His duty. He saved lives. And his reward. A death sentence. The room hangs on his every word. The judge's face remains impassive. Is justice about the law or about doing what is right? Jack exhales slowly. If you take Shadow from me, I know what will happen, he says. I know what happens to dogs like him when they're labeled unfit. His voice tightens. And I won't let that happen, even if it means going to prison. A heavy silence falls over the room. Shadow, unaware of the battle waging. Around him remains still, loyal, unwavering, trusting. Jack places a hand on Shadow's back. This isn't about himself anymore. This is the fight that matters. Shadow lifts his head, eyes full of unspoken understanding. The judge watches the scene before him, a soldier who broke the rules, a dog who never abandoned him. The gavel hovers in the air. Jack holds his breath. What will be the final judgment? Jack's gaze remains locked on the judge, a quiet, determined intensity in his eyes. His breath comes shallow, but his posture is straight. The room feels heavy, a taut string stretched too thin. He knows what he's about to do is reckless. Maybe even foolish, but there is no turning back. Jack's voice is steady, but the weight of his words fills the room. If you must punish someone, punish me, but let Shadow live. Silence. The audience collectively holds its breath. No one could have anticipated this bold, selfless declaration. The courtroom, once a battleground of legal arguments, now becomes a place of raw emotion and unthinkable loyalty. The prosecutor stares, stunned, unable to speak. The judge's gavel hovers, but no one dares to make a sound. Jack stands, every muscle taut, awaiting a response that might break him, but he doesn't flinch. Jack's lawyer, shaking his head, tries to intervene. No, Jack. This isn't the... But Jack is firm, his voice cutting through the lawyer's protests. I'm doing this for him, Jack says, nodding towards Shadow, who stands loyally at his side. The dog doesn't move, his eyes never leaving Jack's. The audience watches in stunned silence, many visibly shaken by the depth of Jack's commitment. How many people would make this kind of sacrifice for a dog, for a friend who had already given so much for their country? Shadow, sensing the tension, leans closer to Jack's leg, pressing against him in a gesture of quiet trust. His fur brushes against Jack's hand, grounding him, reminding him why he's fighting. The dog's gaze is unwavering, filled with love and loyalty. Jack's heart races, but his voice does not falter. If I have to pay the price for breaking the law to save his life, I'll do it. Just don't take him away. The judge doesn't immediately respond. His expression is unreadable, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studies Jack and Shadow, then shifts his gaze to the prosecutor. There is a long, painful silence. The tension in the room is palpable. Will the law be upheld, or will mercy win? The prosecutor, trying to regain control of the situation, clears his throat. Your Honor, the law must be upheld. Justice demands that this be treated like any other case of theft. The defendant broke the law. But even his words sound hollow now. The audience senses the truth. Jack's actions, while illegal, came from a place far deeper than mere defiance. The judge shifts in his seat, his hand lingering near the gavel. The room is frozen. Finally, the judge raises his hand, preparing to speak. The gavel is lifted, poised to strike, to end this chapter in one swift motion. Jack's heart pounds in his chest, his whole body tense as if he's bracing for an impact. But before the judge can bring the gavel down, something unthinkable happens. Shadow suddenly stumbles. His body falters, swaying dangerously as his legs give out beneath him. A collective gasp rises from the audience. "No!" Jack's voice cracks. He rushes forward, dropping to his knees beside Shadow. The courtroom erupts in chaos. People, shouting, calling for help. Jack's hands tremble as he touches Shadow's body. The dog's breathing is shallow, his body unnaturally still. No, stay with me, buddy," Jack pleads, his voice breaking. His fingers dig into Shadow's fur, as if he could will the life back into the dog. "Please don't do this, not now, not after everything." The courtroom, once so divided, falls silent again. A doctor in the audience jumps to his feet, rushing to Shadow's side. He kneels down, checking the dog's pulse. After a tense moment, he looks up, his face grave. His heart is weak. "He's been under too much stress," the doctor says. "It's possible the emotional strain of all this, it was too much for him." Jack's face crumbles. He's been fighting this battle for Shadow's life, but now, with the dog on the brink, he can't help but wonder, did he fight too late? The moment feels like it's slipping away. Shadow's life, hanging in the balance, could be taken just as swiftly as it was rescued. For the first time, the courtroom is not just a place of laws and rules. It's a place where humanity and love collide. Even the judge and prosecutor seem caught in the gravity of what they're witnessing. For a brief moment, the law takes a back seat. The judge's expression softens slightly, and the prosecutor, whose voice had been so firm before, now stands silent, his brow furrowed in a mix of confusion and perhaps something more. The audience watches as Jack clings to Shadow, whispering to him softly, asking for a miracle. Shadow, with all the loyalty in his eyes, remains still, trusting Jack to protect him, even in this moment of uncertainty. In this instant, the courtroom has been transformed into something larger than just a trial. It's a place where people, whether they're soldiers or civilians, are forced to confront their capacity for mercy. As Shadow's breathing grows more even, a tiny spark of hope flickers. Jack tightens his grip on the dog, his body still trembling, but now with a spark of relief, a shaky breath from Shadow. Jack, still holding his breath, doesn't dare let go. The judge takes a final lingering look at the scene before him, the soldier, the dog, and the courtroom full of people who are now united by this single impossible moment. Finally, the judge lifts the gavel once more. The room holds its breath. The moment of judgment is upon them. Will the law rule or will mercy prevail? The courtroom that had once been full of cold, hard justice is now a place of raw emotion. Jack's heart pounds as he watches Shadow struggle to breathe, his chest rising and falling with labored gasps. The dog's usually strong body is weak and frail, and Jack's hands tremble as they hover over his friend, unsure of what to do. "Stay with me, buddy," Jack whispers softly, his voice cracking. His eyes are red, tears threatening to fall. But he holds back, not wanting to show any more weakness in this moment of crisis. A vet bursts through the courtroom door, rushing to Shadow's side. "He needs immediate care," she says urgently, her voice full of concern. "He won't make it if we don't act now." Jack doesn't hesitate. His whole world has always been Shadow. The thought of losing him now, after everything they've been through, feels like a punch to the gut. But he knows there's no time to waste. The judge, usually composed, is visibly shaken by the scene before him. His eyes flicker between Jack and Shadow, both in a state of desperate need. The courtroom is silent, everyone waiting for the next. "Ove?" After a long pause, the judge's gavel remains still in his hand. The tension in the room is unbearable. Then, with a deep sigh, he speaks, his voice full of emotion. The court releases Shadow into Jack's permanent custody. Case dismissed. Two words hit like a wave, and for a moment, no one moves. Then the courtroom erupts. Cheers fill the air, the audience rising to their feet in unison. Jack stands frozen, his eyes wide, unable to fully process the turn of events. His hand instinctively moves to Shadow's side, the dog's weak form, still resting against him. Even the prosecutor, though defeated, gives a solemn nod of respect. He may have been on the opposing side, but there's no denying the bond between Jack and Shadow. Jack cradles Shadow in his arms, rushing out of the courtroom with the vet following close behind. The air is thick with the weight of the moment. The press capturing the scene as if it were a film. Flashbulbs explode around them, reporters shouting questions, but Jack doesn't hear them. His focus is solely on getting Shadow the help he needs. The streets blur around him, but his mind is clear. He's doing everything he can to save his friend. For the first time in what feels like forever, a spark of hope flickers in Jack's heart. Shadow is still fighting, and so is he. Together, they'll make it through this, but Jack knows the fight isn't over. Shadow's battle for survival is far from won. Days later, the hospital room is quiet, save for the soft beeping of machines. Shadow lies in a bed, weakened but alive. He opens his eyes slowly, the light from the window casting a soft glow across his fur. Jack is there, just as he always has been. The exhaustion on Jack's face is visible, dark circles under his eyes, but there's a sense of relief in the way he looks at Shadow. The dog's eyes meet his, a silent understanding passing between them. Jack gently pats Shadow's head, his fingers trembling with tenderness. "We're going to be okay, buddy," he whispers, his voice soft but full of conviction. "We're going to be okay." It's not an easy road ahead, but they are together, and in that, Jack finds the strength to face whatever comes next. The news spreads quickly. Jack's charges have been cleared. He is a free man. The military has officially released Shadow from service, and now the dog is his. No longer a piece of government property, but Jack's loyal companion. As they step out into the sunlight for the first time since that fateful day, there's a new sense of freedom in the air. The storm has passed. Jack takes a deep breath, the weight of everything that has happened lifting off his shoulders. He looks down at Shadow, who trots by his side, tail wagging weakly but steadily. They've made it through. The media coverage doesn't stop with the verdict. Jack's and Shadow's story touches something deeper in the hearts of many people. The once private struggles of retired military dogs come to light, and public outcry grows. Petitions circulate, demanding better treatment for war dogs like Shadow, and new discussions begin to take shape about changing military dog policies. Jack watches it all unfold, amazed at the power of their story to ignite change. But he knows one thing for certain. His mission isn't over. He's not just fighting for Shadow's future, but for the future of every dog who served beside a soldier. Jack throws himself into his new mission with the same passion he once had for the military. He starts an organization dedicated to helping retired military dogs find loving homes. The laws begin to change, ensuring that no war dog will be abandoned or euthanized. The movement grows, driven by the bond between a soldier and his dog. Shadow becomes more than just a companion. He is now a symbol of hope, of loyalty, and of the profound connection between animals and the humans who serve beside them. Jack, who once felt lost in the darkness, now finds himself leading a fight that will change the lives of countless others. One evening, after the long days of work and the noise of the world outside, Jack and Shadow find a quiet hill to sit on. The sun is setting, casting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the last rays of light stretching across the landscape. Jack runs his hand through Shadow's fur, a gentle smile crossing his face as he watches the dog rest his head on Jack's lap. The world seems peaceful at last. "We made it, buddy," Jack whispers softly, his voice barely a murmur in the quiet air. Shadow sighs contentedly, his eyes closing as he rests fully in Jack's lap. For the first time in a long while, there is no fear. There is no battle to fight. Only the soft, steady rhythm of breaths shared between two friends, finally home. As the sun sinks below the horizon, the world around them fades into twilight. But for Jack and Shadow, their journey is complete. They found their peace.